Coming up on Network Africa, the Central African Republic declares 3 days of national mourning following stampede at a high school in the capital city, Bangui. United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher visits displaced families in Shasha village in the DR Congo's North Kivu province. Plus, fresh protests erupt in Togo over President Gassingbe's extended rule and arrest of activist rapper. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in the Central African Republic, where the government has declared 3 days of national mourning after an explosion and stampede that followed killed at least 29 school children and injured more than 250 at a high school in the city, Bangui. Prime Minister Felix Molua has visited the hospital with the injured students to assess their condition. Parents remain shocked as they continue to seek answers after the terrible incident at the Barthelemy Boganda High School. The Ministry of Health says most of the victims, including 16 girls, died at the scene after the explosion resulted in a stampede, while others were confirmed dead at the hospital. At least 260 students were injured and are being treated in various hospitals. An estimated 5,000 students were at the school for higher education exams at the time. Survivors recount hearing a loud explosion from the transformer midway into the examination. The Central African Republic faces a delicate juncture as upcoming elections present both an opportunity and a challenge for the country's fragile peace process. This is according to United Nations Peacekeeping Chief Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who was speaking to the UN Security Council. Despite the ongoing violence, Mr. Lacroix notes progress in accountability efforts, highlighting the work of the Special Criminal Court SCC, which recently delivered a verdict related to deadly clashes in Ndele back in 2020 between two factions. The peacekeeping chief also underscored the upcoming local, legislative and presidential elections as a unique opportunity to strengthen democratic governance.
In the Central African Republic remains concerning, with persistent violations and abuses, including conflict-related sexual violence and grave violations of children's rights. Progress has also been made in advancing judicial accountability, notably by the Special Criminal Court, SCC, which is playing a significant role in the fight against impunity and transitional justice. On the 19th of June, the court rendered its third verdict in a trial concerning clashes that occurred in March 2020 in the Ndele region between two factions of the Front Populaire pour la Renaissance de la Centrafrique, FPRC. However, the SCC is now entering a critical phase that requires reinforced financial and human resources to sustain and expand its activities. The Central African Republic stands at the delicate juncture. The holding of local, legislative and presidential elections presents a unique opportunity to strengthen democratic governance and advance national reconciliation. However, these are sensitive political processes, and the support of all partners of the Central African Republic, including this Council, remains essential.
The United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher has visited displaced families in Shasha village in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. The visit follows the M23 rebel group's seizure of Goma, the provincial capital, in late January, intensifying a decades-long conflict that has displaced more than 4.6 million people. In the aftermath, rebels shot down displacement camps in the city, forcing families to return to the villages they had fled. In Shasha, many returnees found their homes looted or destroyed, with little to no assistance waiting for them. Or aid groups say the forced returns have worsened already dire conditions. Many had relied on the support from the U.S. Agency for International Development before President Donald Trump's administration cancelled its programs. The decades-long fighting in Congo's mineral-rich east is one of Africa's longest-running conflicts and what the United Nations has called one of the world's most protracted and serious humanitarian crises.
People here have been through decades of trauma, and of course the last few months have been particularly horrific for so many displaced, over 20 million people in need, and they are desperate for this conflict to end. Most striking today and yesterday has been the stories of sexual violence, and sitting with women who tell horrific stories, which, too horrific for me to tell here, and who are trying to find the courage to rebuild their lives. We're there providing that support to them, trying to help them rebuild, but they have been through hell. Here in DRC, 70% of our programs were funded by the American taxpayer. Amazing generosity over decades, and now we're seeing most of that disappearing. And so we're having to make brutal choices, life and death choices. And for these women, the survivors of sexual violence, for the kids who told me they needed water, for the communities that told me they needed shelter, medicine, these cuts are real right now, and people are dying because of the cuts. You can feel that we're overstretched in terms of the needs being as great as ever, but we're having to prioritize a smaller number of people, and we're under attack. Here in the DRC, we've lost twice as many humanitarian workers this year already as we did in the whole of last year. We're out there working hard to get access to those communities, trying to get the airport back open, trying to get roads open, trying to unblock checkpoints that are impeding our aid from getting through. You mentioned the NATO summit. A week before last, in Geneva, I released the latest version of our global humanitarian overview, where we have hyper-prioritized the 114 million lives that we could save this year if we get the funding. And all we're asking for to do that is 1% of what the world spent on defense last year. I suppose the glimmer of hope in all of this is, yes, we can work in that more efficient and prioritized way, and we'll do that. But also the communities here who are basically, they've come through so much, and they're determined to support each other. They are the front lines of the humanitarian effort. I really strongly believe that there is a movement out there that will back this work, that will support this work. We've got to find them, we've got to enlist them, we've got to show them that we can deliver for them. And, I've not given up on human kindness and human solidarity. I've not given up on the UN Charter for a second. And this work is at the heart of it.
The federal government of Nigeria has commenced the needs assessment for those affected by the attack on Yelwata community in Benue State. The Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, Professor Nentawe Yelwata, stated this when he led a delegation from the European Union and the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF to the state. The visit culminated in the launch of the EU-funded €10 million social protection program to be implemented by UNICEF from 2025 to 2034.
Camp in Makurdi, the Benue State capital, are still coming to terms with their reality. Yet, flickers of hope flash before them as the delegation from the European Union and the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, arrived at the camp to sympathize with them. The delegation meets with the IDPs in their tent to hear their stories.
Italy, France, Germany.
The team, accompanied by the secretary to the Benue State government, gives an assessment of the situation.
And I'm here with Madam Secretary to the state government to meet women and men who have been displaced from Yeletawa community and other communities before, and who suffered the attack of the 13th of June, because we felt that it was necessary to come and meet them, express our support, our sympathy, our solidarity, and listen to them, and this is what we've just done.
They have indicated and actually are agitating to go back to their communities. What the government will do is to do all in their power to ensure that they can go back to their communities.
The team reconvenes at the Benue State Government House for the launch of the 10-year EU-funded social protection program for the state.
Our hope is renewed because the launch of the SUSI project.
The federal government appreciates the effort of the EU and explains what the government is doing to address the humanitarian situation in the state.
Mr. President asked me to be here to do a need assessment of what happened in Yelwata, and over the weekend, by next week, I should give him a report so that the federal government will fulfill all the promises that they made when he came here.
Nevertheless, the deputy governor makes an appeal for increased investment in the livelihood support for those affected.
Beyond this program, I'm appealing to you to support our community stabilization and reconciliation.
The development partners assure the state government of support, especially for women and children.
By this joint support that we are doing today, we ensure that social protection is understood as a pillar of development.
We will be supporting the development of a state social protection policy and implementation framework. We'll be supporting the expansion and digitalization of the National Social Register.
The Social Protection Program is an initiative of the federal government working with the European Union and the United Nations across 4 states in the country to address rising humanitarian crisis and poverty.
A new wave of protests broke out in the Togolese capital of Lomé on Thursday as hundreds of young demonstrators began a 3-day protest taking to the streets in defiance of mounting political repression and economic hardship. Authorities responded with tear gas and arrests, particularly in the Big Porta area. Roads were blocked, shops shut down, and social media networks reportedly experienced significant slowdowns. Central areas were also heavily patrolled by security forces, while outer districts such as Bay and Adapame saw significant mobilization despite security presence. Protesters, mostly young people, voiced the unified demand calling for the resignation of President Gassingbe. The current unrest builds on demonstrations earlier this month, sparked by the arrest of activist rapper Amron, who was reportedly detained without a warrant by masked men and held in a psychiatric hospital for weeks before being released on the 21st of June. In Kenya, the Interior Minister is accusing Wednesday's protesters of an attempted coup after deadly demonstrations were witnessed in many cities and towns across the country. The Interior Minister, Chipchumba Mokome, assessed the damage to businesses in the capital, Nairobi, on Thursday, where goods were stolen from multiple stores. He said police would follow up with owners whose CCTV cameras captured the looters to ensure swift arrests. Kenyans mobilized Wednesday's protests on social media platforms to mark the first anniversary of huge anti-tax protests when demonstrators stormed Parliament and at least 60 people were killed and 20 others are still missing back in 2024. Government property was also destroyed during the protests, which attracted thousands of frustrated young Kenyans. At least 2 police stations were razed down by angry protesters. Kenyans demonstrated on Wednesday in 23 of 47 counties across the country, calling for an end to police brutality and better governance. Thousands chanted anti-government slogans, and the protest morphed into calls for the resignation of President William Ruto. In the meantime, Kenyan business owners are counting their losses inspecting their damaged shops and going through burnt clothes and trying to save what they can while forensic teams collect evidence. Javan Mohammed, a resident and business owner in Nairobi, says his business loss runs into millions of Kenyan shillings.
And I've been operating this business for the past 8 years. It's a clothing business. Above me is a printing business also, owned by my friend. And yesterday he came here, found them looting. I tried to salvage what I could, but I couldn't stay any longer. I had to run away. And I didn't know it would escalate to a fire incident. They would escalate and start burning the place. So I think the result is as you've seen. They looted my entire stock and resorted to burning the remaining things that were remaining. The shops I had here, the clothes that I had was around 3 m because I had clothes, dresses, wedding gowns. I also had shoes. And the rest is just unimaginable if you considering the fixtures and everything, not even including that. I support maandamano because it's something that's in the constitution. This is just collateral damage, which was done by people who don't have the same spirit and don't want to uphold the constitution. These are just looters and goons who resorted to this. There are people who joined the maandamano labeling themselves as we're demonstrating, but in reality, they're just goons trying to loot.
Welcome back to the program. Russia's G20 Sherpa, Svetlana Lukash, says the country is positioning itself within the G20 framework to support developing regions, particularly Africa, in key areas such as energy, security, infrastructure, investment, and climate resilience. She adds that amid ongoing geopolitical tensions and sanctions, Russia sees its current economic cooperation with African nations as a valuable opportunity to strengthen partnerships and explore new avenues for collaboration.
African priorities are very well placed to achieve also the goals set by Russian Federation in G20. That is promotion of inclusive global growth. That is job creation. That is development of artificial intelligence and approaches to governing artificial intelligence. That is issues of critical minerals, which is important for strengthening both South African and Russian economies.
A military court has officially begun service in Wau, the capital of South Sudan's western Bahr el Ghazal state. It will be hearing cases related to allegations of serious misconduct by uniformed personnel from the South Sudan's People's Defense Forces. The emphasis remains on fairness, accountability, and transparency. General Sten Camilo Mboro, president of the SSPDF, General Court Martial, says there will be accountability applying to anyone who has committed an offense. In the meantime, the UN mission in the country is providing technical assistance and support to the SSPDF Military Justice Directorate to strengthen their capacities as they strive to hold perpetrators of serious crimes within their ranks to account.
We have seen that the willingness in the leadership, especially Division 5, we have seen that the commander is fully behind the process. I have confidence, I have trust that they can deliver justice to the victims.
It is part of a larger reform of South Sudan's security sector. This is part of the peace process. And so in imposing discipline within the forces to ensure that SSPDF personnel abide by the law and that they enforce against their own members the laws is part of the transformation of the security sector itself, which is a critical part of long-term stability and peace.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. As artificial intelligence continues to reshape industries globally, project managers, PMs, are being urged to adapt and lead this digital shift. at the 2025 National Conference of the Project Management Institute Nigeria. Professionals and thought leaders gathered to explore AI's impact on project delivery.
Scenario modeling.
Project management professionals, researchers and industry leaders converge for the 2025 National Conference of the PMI Nigeria chapter in Lagos. With the theme, Navigating the Digital Age, AI and Project Management in Africa's Changing Landscape, the conference zeroes in on how artificial intelligence is reshaping systems, tools and processes within the project management space.
Transforming our lives is transforming our work and it's transforming our world. From automating processes to forecasting risks to managing resources, AI is reshaping the very foundations of how we deliver projects and is doing it at a speed that's both thrilling and, let's be honest, something a little terrifying. As project managers, we need to ask ourselves a question: where does that leave us? How do we learn? Do we sit back and hope we don't get replaced by algorithms? Or do we step up, embrace the tools, reskill where needed, and lead this transformation with wisdom, with empathy, and with vision?
Transformative positive outcome.
Keynote conversations spotlight the need for project managers to not only understand AI, but to actively integrate it into their day-to-day practices.
When we think about AI, it's one of the most transformative tools at our fingertips today. Yet, it is not necessarily new. It has been around for many years in different forms dating back to the 1980s, when the concept of automated project management systems using computer systems for scheduling or analyzing large amounts of project data existed. But AI has evolved over time and has experienced exponential growth in terms of use cases being how you use AI to deliver value in the past 2 to 5 years, as technologies like ChatGPT, Gemini, and even PMI's tool, Infinity, have emerged, changing the way we work. So right now, we're at a pivotal moment because we can use AI not only to deliver quick wins, but to create lasting transformation.
Recognizing AI's role in automating, augmenting, and assisting project workflows, the conference centers on how project managers can adapt and lead in this digital era. The event also offers a platform for experts and emerging leaders to exchange ideas, build connections, and explore innovations impacting project delivery.
Well, you're seeing the streets of Madagascar as thousands flocked to the Mahamasina Municipal Stadium at the Antananarivo on Thursday to celebrate the 65th anniversary of Madagascar's independence after breaking out from the French community in 1960. Well, citizens and soldiers of various units gathered at the venue to commemorate the solemn event in the stadium. A parade from the units was also held in jubilant celebrations following the remarks of President Andry Rajoelina. President Rajoelina called on citizens not to forget the efforts made by their ancestors who led and worked hard to restore independence. The country officially gained freedom from France on June 26, 1960, ending the French colonial rule over the island nation, which dates back to late 19th century. And that's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.